Next topic, let's turn the afterlife into big business. This planet is full of cultures who have made huge investments in the game of survival after death. Some groups have taken the idea of personal continuity to the point where they have lost touch with reality. Perhaps the greatest example of this is the jaw-dropping size of the Egyptian tomb pyramids. The game of the pharaohs was to build a bigger monument than the preceding ruler to one's own self-importance. The very idea that strategically positioning one's worn-out body under a huge pile of rock would somehow improve one's chances of astral traveling to another rock out in space is beyond me. A more realistic goal would be to simply keep out those who would rob and plunder the gravesite. Still, when you compare it to the American Indian's simple method of letting the bodies rot under the open sky on a raised platform, it does seem a bit more uplifting. When you compare the American funeral with other methods of body disposal, it appears to be mainly a function of how much money you have. The rich get the gold casket stored inside a padlocked mausoleum along with a few of one's favorite possessions, while the poor get the crematorium with the airplane ride and the ashes dumped over the ocean, or stored in a jar. Aside from the surprise at all the different methods employed to dispose of our worn-out bodies, I am still puzzled by the variety of desires we project into the after-death fantasy. The common thread seems to be the hope of a reward after a lifetime of suffering, a joyous reunion with God or Jesus or Buddha or Mohammed, or just with relatives and loved ones following the earthly departure, make up the bulk of the expectations. Some folks believe that you get exactly what you believe in, which could leave those who don't believe in rewards or the afterlife, such as myself, in a tough spot. Just to set the record straight, this is what I think happens. After the body dies, your essence is adrift in a sea of possibilities ranging from forming yourself into a new body or wandering around as a bodiless entity, ghost, or dissolving completely into the soup and ceasing to exist as a separate item. At the moment, I like the idea of coming to an end and not being reborn because it gets the whole business over with and provides a rest period. I can go on to sleep and forget all my troubles as if nothing ever happened. In a real sense, I would be letting nature take its course and giving up the little control I have. God can have everything and I'm out of the picture. What's wrong with that? This certainly is not what the religion industry had in mind when the afterlife idea first became marketable. Big business had to sell everyone the idea, like the Egyptians, that the dead continued to influence events with their presence, and therefore the funeral and burial is crucial. Unfortunately, the increasing cost and the shortage of plots may make this belief less attractive in the future. However, one thing is certain, to believe that everyone is simply a modification of an infinite energy field, and you are either alive as a body or dead and dispersed, with nothing in between, ruins the chances of turning a profit. But folks need time to cry and let go of their loved ones, and the funeral provides such an opportunity, along with consoling words promising eternal life in a better place. As healing and positive as this ceremony is with the living, I don't believe it does any good for the dearly departed. When you die, the world vanishes. My next random talk is Zen and Christianity. One of the major differences between Western Christianity and Eastern religion is, such as Buddhism, was the proper use of the mind. Buddhism itself is a belief in the wisdom of nature, and its symbol for nature is a female universe bringing energy into form on the one hand and taking it out of form on the other. One branch of this ancient system is called Zen, which is not a religion at all, but a process of understanding how the mind works, while at the same time questioning the very existence of the mind. The practice of Zen is truly a cure for the burnout brought on by too much thinking, particularly the superficial kind that doesn't add up to anything. Zen is a discipline for revealing the limits of thinking by confronting the mind with questions and situations which have no rational answer. In contrast, Christianity uses the mind as a vessel to instill its doctrines, just as the functions of logic, reason, and common sense begin to function. The Church knows it is important to train children to obey authority and not question it. The very act of thinking for yourself on religious issues is to question the infallibility principle and could lead to eternal damnation. The purpose of this training is to create a system of control in which we all believe the same and think the same. In theory, this uniformity produces law and order, while at the same time, too much destroys spontaneous thinking and creativity. A certain amount of religious control is also required for safety and security, but too much leads to abuse. The peddling of grace and the physical and mental abuse of the faithful by the clergy are two instances, not to mention the destruction of human life during holy wars. In Zen, there is no religion or leader or belief system, only the challenge of discovering who you are and how to achieve serenity within yourself. It requires far more discipline to sit quietly observing the workings of your own brain than to go on singing songs and repeating words that are not yours and which you may not even believe in. Zen not only allows you to think for yourself, it requires you to take full responsibility for yourself. This is completely different from the childish dependency, guilt, and fear of the obedient faithful. Today's popular religion derives its power from the past. Since I cannot go into the past and find out for myself if the stories of Jesus and the saints are true, I depend on written accounts. Even if the stories are all true, I still cannot live my life as someone else. I must live my own unique life in the present moment and make my own decisions. The characters in the holy books of centuries gone by, whom I may try to emulate, do not actually exist outside of my own imagination. The Zen discipline of meditation and koans, that are questions which defeat the thinking process, clears the mind of thoughts and reveals the clarity of the present moment. The full truth about this kind of exercise is that it uses an illusion to dispel an illusion. The thought that we are living in the past is itself an illusion. The truth is we are always in the here and now, but we think about the past by rerunning old episodes while living in the present. Clearing the mind of unnecessary thinking permits a better view. It was during a midlife crisis that I discovered that my thinking was so muddled up from childhood training that it generated all sorts of delusions and anxieties. Some of the fear, not all of it, was a reaction to certain ideas, mostly religious, which were programmed into me repeatedly and which I was forbidden to question. When I began reading books on Zen, I was encouraged to examine those childhood beliefs, question them, and find out where they came from. This process, known as recapitulation, went on for years and required intelligence and perseverance. Finally, after a period of sustained effort, I was able to begin letting go of unsubstantiated beliefs that prevented the flow of happiness. Next topic, what reality will you choose? The Internet has provided a wonderful opportunity to explore the huge selection of belief systems on this planet. It seems to me that each one is a response to human wants and needs, and the most aggressive go on the offensive and try to wipe out the others. This kind of violence and religious intolerance keeps people on their toes, people who might otherwise become lazy and self-indulgent. The reason why religion was so important to ancient cultures and less so to modern ones is because religious beliefs hold the promise of a better life. The promise of an idyllic afterlife is particularly attractive to the poor and downtrodden, even though the program is often financed and run by the well-to-do. Once you convince someone to pledge their allegiance to a vision, they will often hand over their savings, their freedom, and sometimes their lives for the promised reward. The reward can't be given in this life, so seekers can only receive their reward after death. The promoters of this game are often highly intelligent and selective in choosing their targets because it doesn't work as well on those who are well educated, independently wealthy, or accustomed to making their own decisions. Given that it is possible to manufacture a description of reality and through repetition install it into the brain of a 7-year-old, isn't it also possible to erase such a program or amend it later if the need arises? Consider the following. My name is Helga. I am 7 years old. My mommy tells me that I was baptized as a baby to remove the sin of Adam and Eve from my soul, but I don't remember. My favorite lesson is the story of the baby Jesus who was born to save me from my sins and was crucified on the cross. Jesus is the Son of God who lives in heaven and who made me to love him and to serve him. My purpose is to obey God's laws as they are written in the Bible. Now, consider this. My name is Armando. I have no idea who I am or where I came from before I was born. My mommy tells me that I was baptized to remove the sin of Adam and Eve from my soul, but I can't find my soul. My favorite lesson is the story of Jesus rising from the dead on Easter Sunday. I want to rise from the dead too, but I haven't seen anyone do this so far. Mommy tells me that God made me and that God and Jesus live in heaven, but I don't know where heaven is. I am trying to love God and serve him, but it's hard when I can't see God and don't know what he wants. I have to make God appear in my head when I pray. 50 years later. My name is Helga. I have raised 10 children and am a grandmother to 15 more. I go to Mass every day and receive Holy Communion. I pray that God will lead my son Hidalgo back to the church he loved so much as a child and forgive my daughter Ida, who married a Jehovah's Witness. I worry about my grandchildren who I may never see in heaven because my son and daughter refused to baptize them after I refused to attend their weddings. It is difficult to have faith in God's wisdom when so many terrible things are happening in the world. My name is Hidalgo. I am a professor of linguistics at Gaynor University. My wife, Yvette, is in charge of research in the biophysics lab in the new science building. Our 2 children attend Catholic schools, but my wife and I are agnostic. We attend church services with our children, but neither of us believe in the afterlife. Yvette and I have discussed our beliefs with one another and with our children and encouraged them to think for themselves. None of us agree on everything, and yet we enjoy our discussions. Someday my wife and I will grow old and die, and our lives will fade away like a passing dream. The next topic I want to discuss is energy. Since most of us can't see energy directly, we are limited to looking at a blur of energy patterns that we interpret through our belief systems. This is why witness testimony in court has lost some of its credibility since DNA testing became available. When you take a nervous system which is always lagging behind the speed of reality, attach a narrow beam of attention to it, and funnel information through an interpretation filter written 2,000 years ago, what do you have? Us. I can't see energy directly myself and probably never will in this lifetime, but there are ways to intuit or infer the presence of energy which will still get me moving in the right direction. One way is to look at, instead of ignoring, items which reveal the divine presence of energy. One of these is called cloud watching on a summer afternoon. It's one of the most relaxing ways to witness space becoming solid. Out of a blue sky, apparently empty, clouds begin to form. Later, those same clouds may dissolve back into the blue sky. Is God doing that, or is the sky doing it? Is the sky God? Lightning strikes are a perfect example of energy particles collecting inside a cloud and then discharging back to the ground. Nature forms an imbalance within itself, then restores the balance with a flash bang. This is also unmetered electricity anxiously waiting to be put to work for mankind. Static electricity is an excellent example of freely moving energy particles squeezing together to create a tiny spark. Pull the cotton and nylon bedding off a plastic-covered mattress on a clear, cold day in winter, and then place your lips on the metal bed frame. Feel how directly connected you are to a giant energy field. Scientists tell us the world is a mass of bound energy which cannot be created or destroyed, but only changed from one form into another. As a Catholic, I used to believe that a big God out in space created the world out of nothing. But over the last 40 years, I have formed a new faith. I now believe that God is actually a vast energy field which becomes the world and all of its life forms by a very gradual process of contraction and expansion which is still going on. Through contraction and expansion, invisible energy becomes visible matter and then slowly changes back. I can see this happening at the lower speed of matter, but not at the higher speed of energy. For that, I would need a leap of faith. A leap of faith is how physicists who play with high-speed energy particles discovered the laws of thermodynamics. By presuming that transparent energy was there, they performed experiments which would have failed if the energy had not been present. To help yourself understand that God is energy, which is the foundation of the universe, picture yourself as a storage battery which conducts and hoards energy in the mitochondria of every cell and releases it through physical movement, sexual expression, and mental activities like thinking and imagining. Even the image of God, who many believe created the world long ago, is presently arising as a creation of your own brain.